So once I have all my pictures in Photoshop, what Photoshop does is it tries to, well, it doesn't try, it docks or nests them at the top. You'll see each one is up there now. I find it easier to unnest them or undock them, and I just grab that and pull it down so that they're not all stuck up there. It's easier for me to see what I want to do. Okay, so now I have this one I'm going to use as my background layer, we decided, right? So I'm going to have to now make a selection around this lizard in order to grab him out of his environment and put him in this picture, right? So I can do this one of several ways. These tools over here on the left, not the top one, but 2, 3, and 4 are all selection tools. We care about the third one down, which has the lasso tool and the magnetic lasso tool. The lasso tool looks like a rope, like a lasso, and what it does is you just draw around your object, okay? So you can come in and you can draw around it, but you have to be very, very precise and perfect, so it's not the ideal thing to do. So I'm going to come in and draw around this guy, and I'm going to do it kind of poorly. And then once you make any selection, you always have to go back to your starting point and then touch it. And then once you do that, these turn into marching ants. And when they're marching ants, it means that area is in fact selected. The marching ants indicate that. Once you have a selection, you can add to or take away from your selection by using 2 keys. If you'll notice right now, I'm going to try to put this in the darkness so you can see, it's just a lasso tool. If I hold the shift key down, it turns into a plus sign. That's to add to my selection, okay? To add to my selection. So right now I can see that I screwed up here. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to circle this and I'm going to add to it. So I'm going to keep and you see that I added to that selection. I'm going to come in and fix it here where I need to add to it. And the toes here I need to add to. You can see that you need a starting and an ending point when you do this, when you use the shift key to add to your selection. But mostly it looks like I need to take away from my selection, right? Because I went overboard on a lot of it. But I'm going to come in and draw around and try to get this all perfect. So I'll make it bigger so you can see it. So now I need to come in and I need to fix it because I've got too much selected around here. So if I hold the Alt key down, you'll see that my lasso tool turns into a minus key. A minus, that's to take away from my selection. So right now I'm going to come in and I'm going to go around this, and I have to always go back and draw back. And I'm going to, I don't know why it's not drawing though. Okay, so I'm going to draw around and get rid of the excess stuff in my selection. So I can come in, come down here, get rid of that. And then on all of his toes, I would have to go in and do each one, separate each one like this. So you can see that it's very time consuming and, whoops, wrong key, and very kind of tedious. So you can come and do that and you can say, okay, I've got it a lot better. Oops. And so once that's done and that's selected, I'm just showing it to you bad first. In order to move a selection into something else, all I need to do is grab the Move tool, which is the very top tool on the toolbar. And it only does one thing. It only moves. You can see there are no drop-down menus on the Move tool, nothing else. So if you click that, and then you click your lizard, you can pull him. It makes a copy of him. It looked like it cut him out, but it just made a copy of him and pulled him into this scene. But this is really poorly done, right? You see all the edges around here that are bad. So one way to fix that, once you now have 2 layers. One way you can fix that if you really want to be tedious and work very hard is to come over here and grab your eraser tool, and you can come in and erase around it. Because you're on that layer, so it's only going to erase things in that layer. Like if you go all the way across here, it's going to erase everything in there, right? But you would just want to erase around where it is. You also want to be sure that you either have a soft or a hard brush, depending on what you need. If the edges are hard on your subject, you need a harder brush. If the edges are soft, you need a softer brush. And you can again change the sizes of your brush by what keys, guys? The brackets, right. So I could come in and very tediously do all of this to try to get all that excess stuff that's around him off, right? So come in and get all of that off, and then once I have him in there, I go, okay, he looks good, you know. He really doesn't, but let's just say he does. Okay, so I've gotten most of the stuff off of him. But now he's way too big for my picture. Way too big. So what I want to do is I want to resize my selection. When I resize my selection, to pull it in, you're going to use Control T on the keyboard for transform. Remember, Photoshop was made to have your left hand on the keyboard and your right hand on the mouse. So if you hold Control T with your left hand, you'll see that you get this box around your selection, which allows you to do several things. You can stretch it out, make it long and skinny, short and fat, which you know I hate, right? So we don't want that. Now when you've made a selection, when you've done Control T for transform, you can either commit the transformation with this check mark here or cancel it. I'm going to cancel it because I don't want to lose the proportions of him. I want to keep him correct. The way to do that is Control T again. You're going to grab a corner, but the key part here is you're going to hold the Shift key down. Hold the Shift key down. Hold the Shift key down, and you can resize him to whatever size he needs to be. So then I'm going to apply that. Now he's, photo 2, can you guys, shh. So I'm going to move him, and once I have him, I can move him anywhere because he's a layer, but I'm going to, if I go back to transform again and I move the arrow out to the very corner, you'll see that it turns into a two-headed arrow, curved two-headed arrow. That allows me to rotate the picture how I want. But you also notice the shadows from this guy are coming from this, the sun's coming from this side, and the shadows are here on the left, right? So that's the shadows here are coming from the top, kind of straight down. So that might work on this one. So let's move them, and let's put them up against here, maybe crawling up this. Okay, Control T, again, hold the Shift key down to make them the right size, and then I can apply it. Once I've got him about where I want him, I can use the arrow keys to make minute adjustments to where I want him. The right and left arrow keys move him right to the left, up and down are the other arrow keys. So I can put him in there. So then let's say I want to take the dog. The best way to make a selection is not to use the lasso tool. The best way to make a selection is to use this quick selection tool. It's underneath the lasso tool, right below it. And it's where Photoshop now will decide for you what should be in your selection or not. And it's sometimes accurate and sometimes not. You just have to be able to tweak it later. So right now I'm going to start at one end of this guy and you can see that I have a brush. I can make the brush bigger or smaller. Usually you want it to be fairly small. If it's too big, it won't grab details. It'll try to get too big of an area. But I want to grab just the dog. So I'm just going to left mouse, hold my left mouse down as I click and drag along. Okay, and I'm going to come over and grab him and get as much of him in here as I can. Okay, which is pretty accurate, right? And now I'm going to come in with my Alt key, and that's going to turn again into a minus. And I'm going to take away some of the selection. I'm also going to make my brush smaller so I have more control over what I'm taking away from my selection. So I'm just going to take away the areas that don't belong on the dog, in the selection of the dog anyway. I'm just going to come along. I can even click inside here where the background is showing through, and I'm going to take that away from the selection. Being very slow, not sure why. Okay, I'm going to come in and take that out where his paws are separated there a bit. But now we have all of this, and you see that we have hair on him. Photoshop has a really great tool for fixing the hair part. Whoops, I want to get his face in more. Okay, so I'm going to come in, get a little bit of his face, and it's fairly good. It doesn't have to be exact, but you want to take away the big areas that you don't want. Now, you'll see that once this is all the marching ants, which means it's selected, I can come up here to this little button that says Refine Edge. Or I can right-click in the middle and go to Refine Edge, either one. So I'm going to go to Refine Edge. Now that opens a whole nother box. And you'll see at the top it tells me, how do I want to view my selection? Do I want to view it on black? Do I want an overlay? Do I want the marching ants, which I just had, or do I want it on white? For this case, I think we want it on black because we want to see if white is showing around him where the selection is a little off. You can decide whatever you want, but usually black or white are the main ones that we use on that. Once we've done that, we want Photoshop to kind of pick the radius. So I'm going to put Smart Radius, click it on. Then I'm going to move the slider up for Photoshop to decide what is important in this picture. Did you see the adjustments that it just made? I'm going to show you again. You see that it takes away some of the white on the face and some of the white around the edges. It makes it a little bit more accurate. Are you guys seeing that? Okay. It's hard to see on there. I mean, even on white, it's going to be hard to see. Okay? So I've done that. I have other options here. I can now, the key to Photoshop and the hair part is this little icon here. If you right-click on it, it says Refine Radius Tool. This is to refine, especially on parts where there's details, like hair. So I'm going to click that, and then I'm going to come around and I'm just going to paint around the outside of where the hair needs to be more fine. So Photoshop's going to catch all of those little hairs that are around his feet and like on his chin, because this dog is kind of furry, right? Catch them up here, and you'll see that now it caught some of these little areas and brought them back into the picture. So you see that it gets the edges of the tail and stuff that weren't there before. Okay? Then we have these other adjustments that I can adjust the edge. I can smooth it out. If the adjustment came out kind of bumpy, I can smooth it out. Feathering I rarely use because it makes it all blurry around the edges, and usually you don't want that. The contrast will make it darker around the edges, so sometimes that's a good thing. And then the shift edges, you can shift them in or out from your selection. In would make your selection smaller. So if I come in, I can get rid of some of those white areas around the edge of the dog. If I come out, I'm going to get a lot more. Do you see how much more I got on the dog white by doing that? So if I click it in, I want all those little white areas to go away so that he looks like he's really natural. Okay, so I'm going to say OK on that. That's where I want it. Now I have to output it. So I'm going to output it always to a new document with a layer mask. Click on that and say OK. So now it clicked it into a completely different document here. And when you see this checkerboard pattern on the background of Photoshop, it means it's invisible. It means there's nothing there. The checkerboard pattern in Photoshop tells you that it's an invisible, there's nothing there layer. Okay? So I have this, and I'm going to grab my moving tool again. So my moving tool, I grabbed up here, and I'm going to take the dog, and I'm just going to click and move him in. Okay? So I can put him anywhere I want. How do I resize him? Control T. Okay? So I can make him bigger or smaller. I think I'm going to make him a little bit big. Apply it, and then once he's selected, I can put him anywhere I want. And let's say that I want to tilt him a little so his feet are touching that a little bit. Or I want to move him down farther. Or whatever I decide, I can do that by the size that I use. And then I'm going to use the arrow keys to do the minute adjustments. Okay, so there he is running on the edge of this thing. I could even do, I could do something completely different if I want by making him really small, moving him so he's running over here. It doesn't matter. I have total control now because he is a selection. I can do anything I want with him. So maybe we'll put him here. That looks a little more cool. Right now he's kind of floating above this thing, which we can fix. I'll show you how to make shadows later in the week about that. But right now we would just want to move him in. So that's that guy. So now we want to take him and select him. So one way, remember how we talked about the lasso tool? Underneath the lasso tool, behind it, hidden, is a magnetic lasso tool. And so we're going to try that. What that does is this identifies where there's sharp delineation between two edges. So if there's a clean black background like this, the magnetic lasso tool works great. It has a point, and it's going to put little boxes everywhere. You just kind of go along and click it as you go along with your left mouse, and it's going to catch the edges of where you want to outline somebody or something. Whenever it has sharp edges that are very well defined here, it's easy to do it with this tool. It doesn't work unless the edges are well defined on this. So this is pretty well defined, so we have to go back and we have to start all over. I mean, we have to have it catch the first box that we made, so we get the marching ants. And sometimes that's a pain with this tool. Can't get the marching ants until it gets where we started here. Not finding it. Come on, baby. There we go. All right, so now it turned into marching ants everywhere. And it's selected. So we can, again, come in and fix the selection. Maybe I'll go back to the lasso tool to do that, to get rid of some of the, whoops, why did that go away? All right, well, we'll keep it there. There. All right, so now we have him selected. We can go into refine edge, or I can come in and I could take away from some of the selection here, like where this caught his foot. I mean, the part of that, we don't want that in there. And we want to add in, a little bit where this did. So we're going to come in and get that fixed. Did you? No.
I just need Sarah for 1 minute.
Okay.
Talk to her a little.
Okay.
Sarah?
So we're going to take away from the selection here. And so then we have them, we're going to try to fix some of these areas that it kind of screwed up a bit to add to the selection. His hand. Now, once we have this, we're going to go to refine edge because it's going to make a difference in this guy, right? Now, black is what we have him on, and that's going to show him up the best. So we're going to go in and do smart radius. You're going to see that it's going to fix a lot of those problems right away.